We often say that Christianity is true. Many younger people aren't so much asking that. They're asking, is Christianity good? And is it relevant to me? We'll talk about this and more on this edition of the Alex McFarland program. It's often been said that the Christian message never changes, but the methods by which we deliver that message, they frequently need to change. Hi, Alex McFarland here. And on the program, we've got a conversation with our longtime friend and colleague, J. Warner Wallace, in just a few moments. But I want to talk about the uniqueness of the Christian message. Now, true, good, beautiful. Those were three things that Greek philosophers talked about: the good, the true, the beautiful. And I would argue that we know Christianity is true. In other words, it corresponds to reality. That's why we talk about so many of the evidences of archaeology and the empty tomb, that Christianity, the claims Jesus is the Son of God, he rose from the dead, the truth claims of Christianity can be verified. Now, is Christianity good? D. James Kennedy, many years ago, wrote a book called What If Jesus Had Never Been Born? And he talks about the ways the world would be so different. The idea of human rights, just personal hygiene, hospitals, literacy, getting rid of the caste systems of various forms and the monarchies and oligarchies, and having what Abraham Lincoln called the consent of the governed. I mean, so many of the things that have given the world technology, health care, human rights, good civil government, equal protection before the law, due process, these things come right from the Bible. It could be argued on an intellectual level that unquestionably Christianity is a net good. In some of the shows that follow, I want to talk about how Christianity, I believe, is objectively beautiful. Let me share an illustration of how the good news is unique news. You know the story in the Old Testament of how the Israelites, they were in Egyptian bondage and God brought them out and through the plagues miraculously delivered Israel from Egypt. But they were just a very short time into their journey to the promised land, and they began to murmur and complain. In Exodus 15, they were at a place and they were saying, Moses brought us out here to kill us, and God's abandoned us. And they wanted water. They were thirsty, but the waters were bitter. And Exodus 15:23 says they were at a place called Mara, the place of bitter waters. Now it's fascinating. God told Moses in verse 25, God showed Moses a tree, and when it was put into the water, the bitter waters became sweet. Now, the word tree, I began to do a word study on that. In Hebrew, it's ets, etz. Now, in the Greek Old Testament, 200 years before the birth of Christ, the Old Testament was put in Greek, and the word is xylon, X-Y-L-O-N. You know what's amazing is this. The word tree, and the tree made the bitter sweet. It's in Hebrew and Greek, wood used as punishment. And you think, what is that? This was centuries before crucifixion existed. But wood, I don't know, maybe it was a whipping post or a switch or something. But the tree makes the bitter sweet. That's beautiful. What tree? Calvary's cross. Because the Lord Jesus was nailed to a wooden cross, a xylon, a wooden tree. And just like in Exodus 15:25, God told Israel, hey, this tree will make something bitter sweet, and that presence of God was with them for the 40 years in the wilderness. Hey, the tree of Calvary will change your life, and it will become very sweet as you know the Lord. Stay tuned. We'll have a conversation with Jim Wallace and his work to bring this generation to the gospel after this brief break.
In a time when our culture faces unprecedented challenges,
The question is not, will we legislate morality? The question is, whose morality is going to be imposed on the people?
Alex McFarland addresses the hard questions about faith, morality, and culture.
Jesus rose from the dead, then that proves he is the Son of God, but it also proves that he loves you.
For over 20 years, Alex McFarland Ministries has reached nearly 1 million people in person and countless more through media. From youth conferences to national platforms, Alex brings clarity to complex issues, inspiring audiences to stand firm in their faith.
God wants to do things in your life and through your life that will count for eternity.
In a world searching for answers, Alex McFarland offers biblical truth with conviction and compassion. Bring Alex McFarland to your next event. Equip your audience to boldly stand for truth in these critical times.
Welcome back to the program. What a blessing, the colleague and friend that you're about to hear from, J. Warner Wallace. He's the author of 9 previous books. His 10th book is coming out, which he has written with his son, and we'll hear all about that. But, in this ministry, we get to meet a lot of people, and as might be expected, some make more of an impression than others. And really, one of the most impressive people, one of the most inspiring people that I've had the privilege of knowing and frequently interviewing is a man that God has used to inspire millions to apologetics and the Christian message. It's J. Warner Wallace. His website is coldcasechristianity.com. He's with us now, and he's a busy guy, prolific author, highly sought speaker. But J. Warner Wallace, Jim Wallace, thank you for being with us on the program today.
Well, thanks, Alex. I mean, you and I met in the very first year that I ever started speaking after writing Cold Case Christianity, and it's been a blessing ever since. So I really appreciate being on your show.
Well, from the beginning, I realized that you were different. I mean, there are a lot of apologetics people, and you talk about textual apologetics in the Bible or evidential apologetics and the empty tomb, and those are vitally important. But when I first met you, and you were bringing to the table your experience solving crimes and adjudicating evidence and reaching a very solid conclusion. I mean, this has been your career, and I'm not just saying this, I knew God was going to use you in great ways, and he certainly has and is. So before we get into your brand new book, just bring us up to speed on um, what you're doing. I've got to ask this, I'm always curious. Do you have a favorite area of apologetics or Christian theology, biblical truth? What is your bullseye that you enjoy most?
So that's a tough one. I think. Well, first of all, my early work when I was writing books in the very first couple of years I was writing books, I was really trying to share my experience and how I investigated the claims of Christianity as a 35-year-old. But remember, I'm an old guy, so I think along the way, as my kids were getting older and going through high school, I started to get more and more involved with high schoolers, and now probably most of my work is with high schoolers, either through Summit Ministries or through the Reality Standard Reason Reality apologetics conferences that we run. So we're seeing thousands of high schoolers each year. Now, I will say this, for a guy my age as a boomer, what was important to me was, is this evidentially true? And so my earliest books trace that journey through the evidence to see, is Christianity the most reasonable inference from all the different forms of evidence we could gather related to the first century? Is it reasonable that Jesus died and rose from the grave? Because that's what, as a boomer, was important to me. But I wonder, when I talk to high schoolers, I wonder if that's as important to them as it is to me. What I think the shift in culture has been is, not only is it true, that's still important, but is it good? And that's where
Yes.
my work has been in the last 3 books, is really talking about, is Christianity the source of all bad things in culture? If you listen to the news, they'll try to convince you that's the case. We're the reason why people are misogynistic and racist and homophobic, and you name all the bad isms, all the bad obias, and somehow we're responsible for that. So I think really that my work going forward will continue now to be Like, what is it about Christianity that helps humans to thrive and flourish in a way that no other worldview accomplishes? And let's face it, if Christianity is true, it has to survive and make sense in the dirty, gritty, ugly world we're living in. And a lot of us get protected from that, but cops don't. And every single gritty, dirty thing that's happening in your community that you have no idea is even happening, cops are probably handling that call tonight.
Mhm.
And so if Christianity is true, it has to make sense, not just from our, kind of our more stable church experience, but also from the kind of chaotic experience we actually have on the streets, where you see the real evil that exists in the world.
Mhm.
So I want to be able to make a case that it's good. Now, what is it that I would probably be focused on? I do think that because I'm a cop and you're constantly dealing with the worst kinds of behaviors that humans can participate in, especially when it comes to murders. It's not just that we see murders, it's that we see unbelievably grotesque murders that are motivated by twisted motives. And so you have to gotta ask yourself, how could an all-loving, all-powerful God allow this kind of thing to happen? Either he's not all-powerful and he can't stop it, or he's not all-loving and doesn't care to stop it. Which is it? And I think that that's a lot of the work that we explore and a lot of the themes that I'm gonna be exploring as I go forward. But I think that's probably where I also am just a systematic theology geek.
Mhm.
Like, I
Yeah,
love systematizing things 'cause I don't if you believe X, like in a court case, what are the 15 reasons why? That's the kinda thing I'm typically interested in.
sure. Jim, we do 7 summer youth camps. We average 1,200 teenagers, middle school and high schoolers every summer, and we will summer of 25 as well. And you're exactly right. I mean, 30 years ago when we were starting, and my wife and I, she was helping me. I was a youth pastor. She's a nurse, but we were involved in youth ministry. Back then, it was all about what is true. Does this correspond to reality? And yes, Christianity is true. But you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of cultural dynamics have played into this, but maybe the breakdown of the family, the loss of a sense of context. But I think two things that we have to establish, or we try to let the Lord communicate through us. Is it relevant to me? And like you say, is it a net positive? Is Christianity a public good? If you would, how do you talk to a teenager about, okay, Jesus rose, that is factually true, but this matters to me, this is relevant to me. How do you address that question?
Well, you get to do a couple of things. I think that first of all, as you're doing it, my background was in the arts, so my bachelor's degree is in fine art, my master's degree is in architecture, and that kind of went dormant for me for most of my career as a police officer until I started working cold cases. And cold cases are incredibly difficult to prove in front of a jury, but if you can make it visual, if you can just take them along on the visual journey, so it looks like it's an episode of Dateline as you're unwrapping it in front of your jury, it will be a much easier to understand case. And that's what I think I try to do with high schoolers. Number one, can you make it visual so that we're speaking that what I call visualish, not just that when I'm speaking English, I have an image on the wall. That's not what I'm talking. I'm saying, can you speak in images, in a sequence of images? That's what visualish is. And I'm trying to speak that with high schoolers. Can I make this entirely visual? But two, I would say that we're pretty selfish creatures. And what we really want to know is how can this benefit me? That's
Yeah.
sadly true. And that's not why you should believe something, because if it's true whether it benefits you or not. But I think we are selfish in that regard. So, for example, the last book I called The Truth and True Crime, I simply looked at 15 attributes of human flourishing that if all you wanted to do was live this selfish, life that would benefit you, in which you would flourish. Well, it turns out those 15 attributes are biblical. They're ancient because the Bible describes you the way you really are. Now, you'll discover those 15 attributes if you work murders, but you could have discovered them in Scripture. And this is why I think, as you know, Dawkins, Richard Dawkins, the famous atheist, now would call himself, and I think you have to be careful about how you use this term, a cultural Christian. He doesn't mean that like other cultural Christians we know, we attend church, we kind of check the boxes, we identify as Christians. No, he means he would much rather live in a Christian culture than in a Muslim or atheist culture, and he sees this trending in the UK. And so he misses because he knows that even if he doesn't think it's true, but he knows it's good.
Yeah,
And that
isn't that
difference
something?
is powerful.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to have 30 minutes to converse with Dawkins, although we did email together about 20 years ago. But, if Christianity is a myth, why is it a myth that generates tangible good? I mean, isn't that an enigma, you know?
Right. Well, and I think part of it too is this is why I was saying this is why we've now transitioned into doing fiction. We think that we are living in a world in which people are, number one, really interested in stories. Is Christianity just a story? Now, yes, it's a story in the sense that it's a narrative about events, but I think we use that word story to mean fiction. It's just a story. He's just giving you another story. Okay, so we kind of see it this way. Now, what I think is that Christianity has had a huge impact on all of literature, more impact than any other worldview. We are Christ figures in literature that you don't see Buddha figures in literature. You see a dominance of Christ figures in literature because this story is this kind of ingrained in our DNA. Well, we thought I want to always do something creative. That's part of my experience as an artist before I became a cop. And one of the things I had struggled with for years as a cop is, you don't only have a way to scratch that creative itch. But when I started writing books, I thought, I want to be able to write books that nobody else could write. Now, of course, a lot of that means you're going to come, not because I'm special as a writer, but because I have this weird background that I could leverage. This is why when we're thinking about fiction, if we're going to teach a Christian worldview through fiction, we have to use the lane that we're in. My son and I are both detectives. So we're going to have to take an angle that's, so we're writing a graphic novel about a serial killer, and we're just going to highlight one small issue within the Christian worldview. Because here's what I would say. I've been involved in movies. I was in God's Not Dead too. And I get the hit on Christian movies is that they're overly ambitious. Every plane's gotta land easily, everyone's gotta become a Christian at the end of the movie. I get all those complaints.
Yeah,
And I do think that
they're
the
just
world's
so
not that.
stories.
Yes, just so stories, exactly, perfectly said. And I think that what we wanted to do is to write a story that's not a just so story. The story that has an ending feels more like reality, and also kinda traces a serial killer that is more realistic in the way it traces it. So this is a book that it's like for older teens and for adults, not the kind of book you're gonna give a 10-year-old because it's about a serial killer, but it's gonna challenge people, I hope, to think
And
about.
it's called Case Files, and you wrote
Yes,
it with
case
your
files.
son.
Yes, and so it's the first of a couple of books we're writing right now, but this one just talks about the value of human life. So the subtitle is Murder and Meaning. And here's why we thought about this. You've probably noticed, Alex, that when people get murdered, not everyone gets the same press.
Yeah.
And certain murders get covered at a high level and some just get ignored altogether. Does this mean that some people are more what grounds human value? And
Mhm.
so we just want to have a story that kind of triggers and at least discusses that issue because the best way to ground human value is in the value that the manufacturer gives to it. You know, if you said, well, I'm not sure I understand what this object is. Well, if you Google and find the manufacturer, you're going to get a clear idea of what the purpose of this, what was it created for? Well, it turns out the same is true for us. If you want to know what we're here for, what our purpose is, the best and most reasonable approach would be ask the manufacturer because they know why they created it.
Yeah, and this is so exciting, and I wanna talk briefly, we need much more time to talk about human value. We are made in God's image. That's why, like in Matthew 25, Jesus says, "If you give a cup of cold water in my name, it's as if you've done it for me." But, your son, Jimmy Wallace, so you're J. Warner Wallace, and, your son is Jimmy Wallace. You're doing this book together, Case Files. And hey, let me say, having been around, 3 decades of teens and college and young adults, the graphic novel format is so hot. I predict this may be your biggest seller, Jim.
Well, it's been really weird to anticipate, right? I think part of the risk, anything that's creative is risky. You either do something that people think is great, or you took too big a risk and you swung and missed. We're willing to swing and miss at this point, but we want to do something creative, and we do know that we are becoming more. What's leveling the field for all of us, Alex, is the phone, the smartphone, and the way we have been moved towards visual media. has leveled the field. So we wanted to create a visual and kind of a rich, illustrated graphic novel. This is a comic book in large form that traces this serial killer and the investigation along the way.
When does it release?
April 1st. It releases on April 1st, so we're getting close, and, but it's available right now on all the platforms, and you can look, and here's the thing I would say, Alex. I think that people who write books, if they're like me, I don't make a living writing books. I just have things I wanna say, and I hope that people will read them. But I feel bad that we can't just offer the book for free. So what we try to do on the website, and you just go to coldcasechristianity.com, you'll see the top banner is about the book, that we try to offer a package of resources that are free so that you won't feel like you're spending much for the book. So right now, if anyone who orders the book in pre-order before April 1st will get a free digital copy of my book, Forensic Faith, and a bunch of other free things also, and you'll see that on the website.
Bundling, yeah. And who's the publisher?
It's David C. Cook. Now, here's what's great about
Oh,
Cook is they've been in publishing for years and years and years. My first 7 books were with David C. Cook, and this book is from their new comic book division called Crux Comics. So I think it's really kind of a way to kinda launch with them and create something new for Cook, and hopefully, they've got the Action Bible, which is one of the probably the most popular illustrated Bible on planet Earth, so they're
sure.
well versed in this kinda thing.
Now, did you do the art? Did you do the drawings for
I know.
Case Files?
People always ask that because, like, for Person of Interest, my book Person of Interest has 400 illustrations, and I illustrated Person of Interest. But this is a book where I realized that, comic book artists are a cut above,
Oh,
and if you wanna do this well, you hire the best, and that's what we tried to do.
it's an art form. Hey, we're almost
Yeah.
out of time. J. Warner Wallace and I will be together at the Cove, the Billy Graham Training Center in Western North Carolina, July 28th through August 1st. If you want to meet Jim Wallace, he and I will be there to do a deep dive on apologetics. So I look forward to that. The website, again, give us your best website you would like to direct people to.
Yeah, coldcasechristianity.com, and you'll see the books and all the things are there, and yes, I am looking forward to the Cove. Please join us. It's gonna be a great, few days there.
And you can go to the website, thecove.org, to register for that. Hey, man, thanks for your time today. Thanks for all you're doing for the kingdom of God. You are a blessing, and we look forward to when you and I may converse again.
Thanks so much, Alex. I appreciate you.
Stay tuned, folks. We've got a brief break, and we'll be back.
I just returned from a conference at the Cove, and it was absolutely breathtaking in every way. The mountain views, the tranquil areas within the woods, and just being alone with God. Mornings spent watching the sunrise from a rocking chair with coffee in one hand and my Bible in the other. Evenings spent reflecting on the incredible spiritual teaching. It's the embodiment of peacefulness. Come and experience the Cove for yourself.
What does art, literature, and music tell us possibly about Christianity? Hi, Alex here. Welcome back to the program. I enjoyed my conversation with J. Warner Wallace, Cold Case Christianity. And, the evidence for Christianity is something that we often talk about in apologetic circles. But one of the things that I think is very worth telling, worth pointing out, is that the greatest story ever told, the story of Jesus, how God, the God who exists, he loves us, but he wanted to bring us into his presence, but he could not compromise his holiness. Heaven wouldn't be very heavenly if there were sin there, and yet his justice and holiness had to be upheld, and yet his mercy was to be manifested. In Jesus, all of these things coalesce. Jesus, the perfect Son of God, he did fulfill the law of God. He took the punishment for our sin, so there was no sin swept under the rug. God's holiness, nor his law, was not compromised. And yet, the love and the grace of Jesus was clearly manifested and offered to us. That's why the theme of Christianity, redemption, sacrificial, life-giving love, forgiveness, restoration, these are the predominant themes in literature, most movie scripts, even if it's a hero and villain type of story, there's a good guy that rescues the imperiled victims. Well, that Messiah figure that is so prominent in literature It's pointing to the true Messiah, which is in Jesus. Far and away, Christian themes dominate art, and there is a whole category of music and composition that is sacred music. Really, this speaks to the reality of the Christian faith. And so, not only is it a true story, a beautiful story, it's a personal story. And I hope that it's your story, and it can be today, that Jesus truly does love you, and He gave His life for you. And your life, regardless, this is the good news, regardless of what your life might have entailed, pain, disappointment, poor choices you wish you could forget, bring the whole bundle, messy as it may be, you bring it to Jesus. He will forgive you. He will restore you. He will take away your remorse and bitterness and give you joy. He really, really will. And He's as close by as a prayer. If we can help you, go to alexmcfarland.com for more information.
Wow, I cannot say enough about the Keros experience. This is the best decision of my life.
God is calling you here. He's going to help you. He's going to lead you in the right direction. You'll see the heart of Andrew. You'll see the heart of all the instructors. And the Lord will speak to you if you come.
If you are desiring to come to Bible college, then you have a word from the Lord.
God has something for you. Here, come.
Alex McFarland here, inviting you to partner with what God is doing in our ministry to evangelize the lost and equip the saved. You know, I'm so grateful that our ministry, radio, television, conferences, publishing, camps, our media, our staff, it's all growing, growing, growing. And we could not do it without the prayers and financial support of each and every one of our viewers. If you would please go to my website, which is alexmcfarland.com. You may give securely online. Just hit that donate button, or you may mail a check in any amount. It will be used for God's glory and for the defense of the Christian faith. If you would mail a check, you can just write TNG, as in Truth for a New Generation, P.O. Box 10231, Greensboro, North Carolina, 27404. Now, we've gotten such great response about our peanut butter, all natural. My grandmother taught me how to make peanut butter. If you'll give a tax-deductible contribution of at least $50, we're going to send you a jar of our all-natural North Carolina peanut butter. It is so good. Specify smooth or crunchy, and we'll get some of my grandmother's recipe peanut butter out to you. We'll also send you our report, 480 million views and listens in the last 12 months. Please pray and support, and we thank you.